Hey everybody, this is Monica Guzman again, coming to you on a very late Sunday night to talk about some more topics that are relevant to what's happening in America in 2021. So today was Father's Day, and it still is if you're on the West Coast for a little under 3 more hours. I hope all the dads out there had a wonderful day. I hope you guys had the opportunity to barbecue and grill and tell dad jokes and to be your providing selves. And I personally had a great Father's Day with family, and we were outside in the California COVID killing sun. I caught some color. I imagine that is going to hurt tomorrow. So I'm gonna do the aloe tonight and see how it goes over the week. I actually caught some on my face too. You can't really see it, but so we had a good day around here. Today solidified my belief a patriarchal society is the best society. And I'm going to remind you that it was the patriarchy that built America. So I'm using the Pilgrims as the starting point of America as opposed to 1776, not because I'm trying to minimize the importance of July 4th, 1776, but I'm trying to show that the beginning of America started with the Pilgrims, and it started at a time when the Pilgrims had zero infrastructure, yet they persevered. They helped lay down the groundwork to build this wonderful country that we live in, that non-Americans have been riding the coattails off of, and are dead set on destroying. So there was great conversation today. There was great food. There was great weather. We are still roasting in California. And, you know, and this happens in marriages too. I think a few years ago now, Justin Bieber and Hailey Baldwin got married, right? And these are two young kids who don't come from solid households, meaning they don't have awesome examples of loving and caring marriages, yet they got married and they seem to be doing pretty well. And Justin Bieber, ironically, of all people, gave some pretty cool insight that the marriage early on was difficult for them because neither wanted to hurt the other's feelings. So they weren't communicating as freely as maybe they were when they were dating. And it happens in all relationships, though. It's not just marriage. It's the father-daughter relationship. It's the mother-daughter relationship. It's the just all the combinations out there in hetero world marriages. I'm not talking about homosexual marriages, or I mean maybe unions, but definitely not marriages. I'm talking all hetero, right? Not homosexual. And so, we all age, and I can give you an example. So a couple of weeks ago, my dog was trying to climb up here with me, and I couldn't let him because it's something I learned when my kid was still early toddler years. And I'm bouncing around a couple tangents, so hopefully I don't lose my train of thought. Um, so when my kid he was already walking, and he must have been over a year, but under like 3 years old. I needed to get something on the car fixed. I don't know if it was just an oil change or if it was something else, but the place that I went to had this play set, and with trains and stuff. And so my kid started playing with that as we were waiting, and then something happened. And again, I'm still a very young parent at that point, and I just let it go. And I shouldn't have let it go, because then my kids started crying. And the man who managed that location said to me, "You got to watch out for those self-inflicted wounds." And so my what was happening, but I let it go because it was my kid, a toddler. I love him, and it was a self-inflicted wound. And so with my dog, when he knocked over a couple of the wires, I didn't pick him up, because I said to myself, if I pick him up now, he's going to want me to pick him up going forward. And I'm trying to gain consistency on these streams. So I chose not to, because I didn't want to inflict a wound on myself. Okay. So now going back, we all reach a point in our lives where, as we age, we know we're coming to the end, right? And in my case, my dog he's outlived the average lifespan of his breed and just dogs in general. So every moment that he's still alive is basically a bonus. I've heard of his breed living up to 18 years old, 20 in some rare cases, and I would be so grateful if my dog made it that far, because right when you've had them for that long, that's basically an adult child, and you love them as a family member. And so, because I'm so aware that my dog is approaching the end, I don't let things go by, but I definitely have more patience. Like, for some reason, I don't know if you guys have dogs, as they're getting older, follow you around everywhere. My dog, one of the things I fear is stepping on him, because he is a tiny dog and he walks alongside my feet, and I say to myself, I'm going to end up stepping on this dog. But at the same time, I force myself to have patience, because I remember that he's approaching the end, and what if something happened all of a sudden? Do I want the last memory I have to be me being mean to him, right? So in relationships, whether it's a marriage, whether it's father-daughter, mother-daughter, mother-son, we hold back. And because we're trying to keep the peace. And I guess as people get older, we get more irritable, but at the same time, we see life a little bit differently, because we're aging. And again, we're approaching the end, right? What did Bella say in Twilight? Like, every second I'm getting closer to death or something, right? And so it's always wonderful when you can have conversations with family members out in the open, not because anybody's picking on each other, but just having conversations that Americans can no longer have with each other, right? I don't know if I have woke family members, but those of you out there that do, it must be a food fight at Thanksgiving, right? And then you've got to just tiptoe around them and just like listen to their nonsense. Like, how miserable must that be? So I personally don't believe I have woke family members because, again, we're Mexican. I'm first generation. My cousins are first generation. And so we have a different experience from Americans, or second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on. Like those of you that have far more guilt out there, right? And there was a lot of good conversation today around some pretty amazing food. And it's always good to hear my dad talk because I remember how lucky I am that I grew up in the family that I grew up in. And I also remember that it's just not common anymore. So Gen X is known for being the latchkey generation, but I believe that's on the American side, not like in my case where I'm first generation American from of Mexican background. So I wasn't a latchkey kid. Gen X is the beginning of the latchkey trend. And so today was another time where I was reminded how lucky I am to have grown up in the environment that I grew up in with parents who raised us the way Americans used to raise their children through, let's say, the 1940s. And then it's so much more today. I mean, we're living in the midst of single motherhood. We're living in the midst of beta males. We're living in the midst of degeneracy. The attempt to normalize degeneracy is in full force and it's getting stronger. They don't hold back anymore. There are ads and commercials that are just blatantly in your face, throwing degeneracy out there, and it's so disgusting. And so we have to figure out how to get back to American values, American values and the American mindset and the American way of living, because this country has not been under the American way of living since definitely the 1960s. I will argue forever that Americans lost their country in the 1960s. So we all know that the nuclear family is pretty much shot. We know that women have been encouraged to be as selfish as possible. And we know that you guys are just not in good shape. And I don't mean just physically outward. You guys are bathing in drugs, you're bathing in laziness, you're bathing in poor health, you're bathing in self-hate, you're bathing in fear. And so we have to turn that around. Clear-minded people, fair-minded people, we have to keep working to turn this around. The patriarchy built America. If you're offended by that, I don't know what to tell you. To believe that women can be men is just the height of stupidity. Women will never be men. Our biology is completely different. And again, I have been constantly reminded of that for the last few months. Just because I have been taking care of my health and there are exams that I have to go through because of my age, and also because I have to catch up on all these exams that I put off for a while. And this COVID lockdown period was extremely, I didn't write the Great American Novel during it, but I definitely got a lot done. I was extremely efficient. I got a lot done. A lot of this research I did during the lockdown. So if those of you who were hoping to destroy America further, it failed with me anyways. I definitely got a lot done. And one of the things I was able to do was get a bunch of health screenings and stuff. And I'm good. But as I age, there are exams that I have to go through. And for women, we are expensive. We're not just expensive materially, we are expensive health-wise. And women who want to be taken care of by the government, you are nowhere near as empowered as you want to believe, because you are depending, you're depending on men still, but you are becoming a burden on the rest of the country when you expect government to pay for your birth control so you can go out there and be a whore. That's ruining you. That's definitely lessening your chances of finding a mate who will love you and take care of you. So the patriarchy built America. Deal with that fact. America's falling because the patriarchy has been almost, what do we want to say, 60% dismantled. And I am an advocate for the patriarchy because American men are among the most noble and selfless men that you're going to find out there. Obviously, every culture has those men who will love their wife, who will love their children, who will provide for their family, who will be decent men. And people who are not American, people who have they don't care what happens to you once you fall into your sports gambling addiction or your drug addiction or your alcoholism. Once you fall, you're done. I don't believe that rehab works. I believe that you are tainted for the rest of your life and you are a potential burden to others for the rest of your life. That's why it's important for families to be responsible for each other. You cannot be everybody else's problem. If you need to be someone's problem, you have to be your family's problem. And if it has to go into the extended family, so be it, but you cannot be a burden on society. And again, that's one more thing that hopefully we're going to be able to turn around. So my original theme for this weekend was the erasing of America one law at a time. And yesterday I talked about the 1960s was the beginning of the end. In the 1960s, one court case managed to begin the process of removing prayer in public schools in America, where we have the freedom of religion. All because one Jewish dude decided that he was offended by Christian prayers in public schools. So this country started succumbing to the minority all the way back into the 1960s. And so then you have the other court case from an atheist who started the process of removing Bible studies in United States public schools where we have the freedom of religion. So again, one law at a time. And these pot laws are the best example of legalizing degeneracy. So if somebody wants to destroy their brain cells because they want to be degenerates and smoke pot, obviously that's their choice. It's the same thing with alcohol, right? You want to drink yourself to death, that's your choice. You have the right to kill yourself that way. The issue with pot is that it spreads far and wide. So you can have one bad apple in a suburban neighborhood that stinks up the place for everybody else, but you have to live with it because it's legal. So they've legalized degeneracy, and it's a burden on other people. Again, one person wants to be low IQ and wants to destroy themselves. I mean, what are you going to do, right? Like the weak and the low IQ have to die off because that's how you raise the rest of society. If you can get rid of if the weak links get rid of themselves, it lightens the load for everybody else. But again, we live in a nanny state. The weakest among us are celebrated. And it's just one more way that laws are being turned against Americans on their own soil. And we need to figure out how to turn this stuff around so we can lighten the load, reduce the net negative, and then that way the ones with bigger brains can continue to thrive, and continue to at this point we just need to restart, right? It's not about we need to restart America. It's not even about rebuilding at this point. It's just restarting. And so with Father's Day, again, to me today, it just solidified my support for men with American values, who have been attacked at every possible turn, especially in entertainment, where again a lot of the stuff that I'm rewatching, um, it's always the white guy who has money, who is portrayed as a jerk, as a rapist, as a cheater, as a uh, just a bad guy, right? When in reality, we know that there are bad seeds, but it's not all of them. And so women have been convinced to reject these men who can provide for them so that you can go be a tax slave at your minimum wage job. And then you're going to get to the age of 40 when you're dried up, possibly starting to hit menopause, and you're going to realize that it's too late for you. And so the men your age are over you because not only do you not provide, can you no longer provide them children, you can't even provide companionship because you're starting to fall apart at that point. And why is a man who just met you going to agree to be your nurse? You know, and on the flip side, somebody pointed out, okay, so Al Pacino is, I mean, we're always going to remember Al Pacino for his role in The Godfather. Maybe my favorite Al Pacino movie is Heat. Total badass, right? Any Given Sunday is another good one. I haven't seen Panic in Needle Park. Pretty outstanding in that one. I've seen other stuff like The Devil's Advocate. I saw the one with Hilary Swank. So I've seen several Al Pacino movies. I've seen several Al Pacino movies the way I've seen several Clint Eastwood movies. Those two dudes are just badass. But in both cases, and I'm only going to use Al Pacino as an example right now, he's an older man who's falling apart. And a few months ago, possibly last year, Page Six published a short, they're not articles on Page Six, they are blog posts, right? And so his former girlfriend, Al Pacino, stated that she loved him very much, but he was an old man. And so I'm assuming that she was more of his nurse as opposed to his companion or girlfriend. And so it goes both ways, right? Men, you're also going to reach the point where a young 20-something is going to look at you and be like, yeah, I don't really want to be your nurse. I kind of want to travel and explore and live and have children. So we've got to balance this stuff out. And so let me work my way back because I'm definitely off on a tangent right now. So again, go patriarchy. No, for sure. Go patriarchy. So again, I hope the men out there, the dads, I hope you had a wonderful day. I hope you were celebrated, or at least, you had a day to enjoy. And so let me move toward this new federal holiday that some people are going to celebrate, I guess. So let me tie this into MLB. I remind you that the USA population hit 330 million by the census estimates in July 2020. The breakdown of the population is 60% white, 18% Latino, 12% African, 1% Jewish, and then Asians make up the balance. And then, of course, you always have a trickle of others that, there's like super single digits. And so I want to remind you of these numbers because what you see on TV doesn't reflect the population statistics. So there's some other stuff that I watch right now that has commercials. And those commercials, I haven't actually sat down and counted them. But Jake from State Farm used to be white. Jake from State Farm is black now, or African. And a lot of these commercials that I get to see are skewed heavily toward Africans. Now, when I first noticed that, I didn't really care because my perception of the economy has changed in the sense that I'm more aware of how GDP came to be, how Americans are being used as consumers at all costs. That's why consumer debt has been so high. And then the USA itself is in a lot of debt. So I said to myself, you know what? If they want to turn Africans into consumers, they should do it. Because hopefully what will happen is Americans will become less consumer-ish. And that is actually positive because it's going to put more money in your pocket. And then you won't be supporting all these corporations who are willing participants in this legalized degeneracy stuff that's happening. and just a general, they're participants in this turning over of the table. They're participants in critical theory because they are, so I don't know if this is qualifies as a psy-op. So if you continuously see Africans on television, whether it's through professional sports, commercials, advertisements, TV shows, news shows, all the genres of television, reality, news, soap operas, dramas, so all these genres, right? So what I think is happening is they're trying to convince you that Black or Africans rule America. We already know that there's been a constant push to, I think they called them, someone on Twitter called them medieval dorks, because, right, there is a woke population out there that keeps pushing the idea that the medieval people were actually African, when we know that medieval times, the people who delivered stuff, the people who delivered progress, not progressive, but progress, were European descent. I'm actually working on this project, a writing project. And there is this really cool tradition that stemmed out of Italy. And it makes sense because it stemmed out of Renaissance Italy. And, you know, so many great things came out of Italy at that time. They were like their version of Silicon Valley. A lot of tech came out of that time period, specifically out of Italy. And then, of course, the opera and a new drama structure. And then something, comedies changed during the Renaissance in Italy. So I've since last year, when the Met Opera allowed us to view an opera a night for free, I watched all of them. I didn't miss an opera, and it solidified my opinion that Italy was the cultural epicenter of Europe. I know France did a lot of great things too, but I mean, French was the language of diplomacy for a long time, right? Italy just is so special. I mean, Italians, you have so much to be proud of. And but okay, so let me go back. And let me use MLB example. So MLB is still majority American, but the Americans that they have recruited are overwhelmingly betas, weak, injured, or in on it. So like, you know, Garrett Cole, okay, so what's happening right now with pitchers cheating, to me, it's a moot point, because is Garrett Cole really a pitcher? I don't think so. Is Tyler Glasnow really a pitcher? I don't think so. Is anyone on the Rays staff really a pitcher? Not in my opinion. I'm going to argue that Friedman's guys aren't pitchers either. These are all engineered bots, and the majority of them have a resume of injuries. So, and then on top of that, they willingly kneeled for Africans last season. They willingly kneeled. So that tells me that they are Marxist inclined. And so you've got that white self-hating population very prominently displayed in MLB. Garrett Cole went as far as defending Curt Flood. But again, so Garrett Cole cheating just adds to my me not respecting him as a baseball player. To me, it's like, oh yeah, of course he cheats. You know, he's an engineered bot, a narrative. So whatever. Okay, so there are some guys out there who I believe are just caught in the storm that's happening in MLB. And for me, it's Madison Bumgarner, Zach Greinke, and DJ LeMahieu. I think it's great that Chris Taylor is having a wonderful season, but I can't root for him because I don't understand what was going on with him 2018, 19, and 20. I still don't understand how he went from his spectacular 2017 season to his mediocre seasons that followed. Whether I really hope that he wasn't a willing participant in all the analytics stuff. I mean, I know the story of how or why Friedman specifically acquired Chris Taylor over the other options that maybe were out there. So the story is that Woodworth, they held some sort of practice. They held some sort of tryout, and it must have been in the minor leagues. And Woodworth, a willing analytics follower, had a group of players do some drills. And Chris Taylor did them willingly and well. And so when I heard that story, even though it was during Chris Taylor's spectacular MVP 2017 season, I kind of brushed it off because I said to myself, you know, he's doing so well. He was hitting doubles and he had a pretty good batting average. And so I was all in. And then he had his outstanding home run in game 1 of the World Series in 2017. And to this day, I remember Joe Buck's call. He said, bang, starts the World Series for the Dodgers. Or hopefully I didn't, I might have paraphrased it, but I remember Joe Buck saying, bang, starts the World Series for the Dodgers. Chris Taylor starts the World Series for the Dodgers, something like that. And but then Chris Taylor kind of fell off, and it became difficult for me to defend him because I don't know if he was willingly participating in all the analytic nonsense that Friedman and Farhan Zaidi, because that's what Stan Kasten wanted to the organization. So I still think it's great that he's having a wonderful 2021, but I cannot root for him. So what does MLB promote? MLB promotes Dominicans, Africans. They're not really in on the Puerto Ricans and the Cubans, but they're there in the background, right? Now, why is MLB so persistent on the Dominicans? Given that Dominicans use steroids, to this day, no MLB reporter has followed up on whether steroids are still legal in the Dominican Republic or not. I have not redone my search, but the way Twitter operates, I actually don't mind that Twitter shows me some articles based on keywords that I tweet, because it makes searching for the stories so much easier since they pop up on, it's not my timeline, it's another setting that they've got. And that's why I try not to update Twitter that often as far as the version, because I like my settings as they currently are. So I can tell you that no story from MLB reporters has popped up updating the status of steroid use in the Dominican Republic. And again, it goes back to the fact that MLB is pushing forward steroid user David Ortiz, and I'm sure there are others in the pipeline that they're going to be pushing forward. So, what is it exactly about Dominicans that has MLB's eye? It's probably the fact that Dominicans have a high descendancy from African slaves. So I put that theory together last postseason. I'm trying to remember when exactly I heard this, but it was definitely Pedro Martinez. And I'm trying to remember if it was on TBS during the postseason or if it was on the Baseball Hating Network during the season. But it's not, it's got to be postseason because I did not watch the Baseball Hating Network last season. That was me weaning myself off of that. And as soon as I realized that the 2020 season was going to be used as a science experiment, I was like, you know what? I don't need to watch this nonsense. And I started watching some other stuff. So the Dominican Republic, 90% of their population has some descendancy from African slaves. 15.8% of the population considers themselves to be Africans. So Pedro Martinez pointed this out most likely during the postseason 2020. So basically, the conversation or the logic was saying that Dominicans are natural allies of Africans because they have a shared descendancy from slavery. Puerto Rico is made up of 12.4% African. Cuba has a 9.3% African population, and 20% descend from African slavery. So these particular Latino populations are promoted by MLB, and they're promoted because they have such a high African tie. So I imagine what is happening behind the scenes is that you've got these players from the Dominican Republic, from Cuba, possibly Puerto Rico. I'm not sure. I looked up Venezuela, and it's only 3.4% African population. I didn't find how many descend, if any, descend from African slaves. But Venezuela is a different story, right? Venezuela has basically collapsed because it went Marxist. So, if anything, I guess what they have is that Marxist leaning. They probably have some sort of African in them too. But so what you've got is this MLB specifically recruiting specific types of players, right? They are specifically recruiting players that will kneel for Africans, players that are engineered, players who have a history of injuries, players who are willing to cheat. So it's just a cesspool over there. It's degenerate city. It is disgusting what's happening over there. And don't be shocked that your ratings fall. And I'm talking about ratings historically. I'm not talking about, oh, your ratings 2020, 2021 compared to 2020, even your ratings when MLB started the blackout, which I believe is 2012. Now, because Twitter has expanded they don't crop photos anymore. You can see my beautiful historical ratings trends, which is just like this. Sure, they've got a couple blips, but it's like this. And so whatever. So this adding Afro is something to watch out for. So Afro Dominican. I believe I heard Afro Mexican, and that's exactly what I've been talking about in past streams. Is it's just a matter of time before this critical theory nonsense walks itself over to Mexico too. Given that Mexico, there's already enough problems over there as it is. We don't need the Jewish community with their critical theory walking over the border and bringing that too. We definitely don't need this African kneeling stuff heading over there either. We've got to stop it here in America because America needs to continue being the world's beacon of freedom. So something else. So what is this? What is this Afro-Dominican, Afro-Mexican stuff? So have you noticed this trend of African men who marry white women and still want to be Black nationalists and whites are bad? So RG3 is a great example of that. That dude tweets all sorts of anti-white stuff, but the guy married a white woman. Something happened last year where he tweeted some sort of video with her on the couch, and she didn't seem particularly happy about whatever had happened. It could have been an apology for him basically throwing garbage at her for being white. So, but he's not the only one that has done this, right? There are a couple of Africans that work for CNN that are married to white women, and these men are total Black nationalists. And then I haven't seen any more interviews with Ellen Pompeo. Now, I remember when Ellen Pompeo made a guest appearance on Friends, and I remember watching an interview for Grey's Anatomy as to why she specifically received the leading role for the show. So I don't know if it was the casting director, if it was a producer, but they went with her because she has sad eyes, and for her character, it does fit. If it does fit, that's why, when it comes, so what we see in television and movies, we don't see actors anymore. We don't even see your Al Pacinos, right? Meryl Streep. She is an outstanding actress who is a chameleon, right? She doesn't take on these roles of being the bitchy girl or being, they're not even acting anymore. Degrassi is an example. It's just kids being kids on camera and being filmed. So you can tell when an actor isn't an actor because they react in situations, they act in cliches. They always revert to the pouty mannerisms or reactions. They are not your Clark Gables. They are not your, obviously, Al Pacino. They are not even your Meryl Streeps. They are not all those fun actresses from the black and white movies. Joan and somebody else. They are, and I'm going to do a whole thing on this explaining to you why, but I just want to throw some stuff out there for you. So with Ellen Pompeo, I like what she did with Meredith Grey. I haven't watched at least 3 seasons, so I don't know the direction that she's taking the character in since then, but I really enjoyed what she did with the character the first several seasons. Grey's Anatomy definitely started to go sideways and woke when she stopped being the main character. And I believe it's because she was pregnant. And so they gave leading storylines to the other characters. So you get the homosexual storylines, and then you get the African storylines down the road. But Ellen Pompeo was used as an advocate for Africans in Hollywood. So she continually stated that she wanted Hollywood sets and TV shows to look more like what the real world looks like. So Ellen Pompeo, I believe, is an intelligent woman. She's also a Boston Irish. Now, she married an African, and I don't know what her children look like, but I imagine that they look more African than white, kind of like Heidi Klum's kids with Seal, right? They don't look like her, they look like him. Now, a while ago, I saw someone tweet something how what a shame to have this beautiful woman and not have children who look like her. But Heidi Klum did have a daughter with a businessman. I guess she was previously married. And her daughter with the pre-Seal guy is beautiful. And I believe she's on her way to becoming a model. So Heidi Klum was able to give birth to someone or a child that looks like her. And Heidi Klum is, among that supermodel era. She's beautiful. And so at least that lineage did continue. Now, Ellen Pompeo, obviously I'm not trying to bring people's children into this. I wouldn't want anybody to bring my child into this. What I'm trying to say is, like Barack Obama, who is half African, half Marxist, like Colin Kaepernick, who is half African, half white, and then others who are mixed race, they tend to identify with their Afro side. So obviously it helps when they look more Afro than white. It's going to be really interesting to see how Harry's and Meghan's kid turns out, given that that kid um, definitely looks white. We'll see where that kid ends up identifying, because that's the problem with mixing races, is that your children are born, and then once they start hearing the nonsense that's around today, is they lose their identity. They don't know how to identify. They get lost, and then they become targets for the Jewish community, who is always looking for ways to squash the American. And so you've got these kids who don't know how to identify, and so they become targets, and that is definitely a problem. So hopefully Harry and Meghan's kid won't be confused, because as it is, Harry is just a mess. So lock up your betas, because you don't want your Meghan Markles to find them. So back to Ellen. I wonder what her opinion is now, given that there is so much representation of Africans in television. Did she want these statistics of 60% white, 18% white, 12% African, 1% Jewish? Is this what she meant about representing Hollywood the way America looks? Or did she know that what was coming is over representation of Africans? Now, I'm just curious. That's just me being curious. I mean, there's nothing you can do. The genie's out of the bottle, right? So whether that was her intention, or whether she didn't think it through, or again, she's an intelligent woman, but she either got bamboozled or she didn't think it through. So I wanted to keep it light tonight. I wanted, again, when I hit go live, I wanted to keep it light, but again, there's a sense of urgency, because how many more laws are going to come down the pipe in the illegitimate Biden administration that just continues to undo America one law at a time? I mean, one way to look at this is that the Supreme Court has basically been illegitimate since it ruled against freedom of religion on American soil. So if they want to keep taking this further, all they're doing is delegitimizing themselves, the government, and Americans need to be ready not to respond directly, but be prepared for the fallout. Be prepared if it comes to your neighborhood. Be prepared if it comes to a family member. You know, we don't know. We don't know, but you've got to be prepared for the fallout. Let me start summarizing so I can go ahead and wrap up. I didn't mean this to go an hour, but here we are. So this so-called new federal holiday that America has is not an American holiday. It is a continuation of what's happening in MLB. It's a continuation of what's happening in the government that isn't run by Americans. It is an effort to overturn the table, because critical theory seeks to overthrow the majority. So critical theory has entered America. Americans are the majority, but critical theory seeks to overthrow you on your own soil by people who have no roots to this land. They don't care what happens to you. If you fall into addiction, you're not their problem. You turn into everybody else's problem. The way homelessness just keeps increasing. You know, Americans do have a good spirit. They are Christian and they have a good spirit, but it's a little bit difficult to be concerned about homeless when it's everywhere. We could be we could tackle the homeless problem when it was one here and there. But now they're lining the streets in several American cities, several California cities. If you go downtown, they're everywhere. If you go to Venice Beach, they're everywhere. They're even in Orange County. They're obviously in Sacramento, obviously in San Francisco. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult to be concerned when it's basically the norm at this point. Um, I want to remind you that America is still 60% American. You still have the majority. You've got to stop letting things happen to you. It's got to stop. It's got to stop. If you form your Ben Franklin groups, you are better positioned to sniff out the FBI infiltrationists. Sniff them out. You're not going to be able to sniff them out once you reach 100, once you get into thousands. If you keep your groups small, you keep each other honest, you check each other, and you prevent being painted into a corner the way it seems that the people who went to the Capitol on January 6th were boxed in. You guys have to sniff them out. Don't let them into your circles. And the project that I'm hoping to get off the ground next year, I'm hoping is one way to get this stuff going. It's a revival of something else that happened in this country, and I believe that's how we're going to find our next leaders. It's going to be decentralized. It's going to be local, and I think it'll work. And I even think that the model can be applied to other countries who just want to clean up corruption and who want to clean up their neighborhoods and their countries. So I want to thank you guys again for listening, people who come across these videos, lending me your ear. I will be back next weekend, and I'm going to do a 4th of July stream. There wasn't enough time for me to prepare something bigger for 4th of July, but I'm hoping that next year we can. For Independence Day, we're going to celebrate it as if it was a homosexual pride parade. We're going to celebrate it as if it was the new African holiday. Just, they don't want you to celebrate your true American holidays, but they're more than willing to celebrate these legalized degeneracy holidays. So hopefully maybe next year we'll have some groundwork laid down so we can really celebrate Independence Day in American style. This year, I just didn't have the resource to even try to get something like that off the ground. But hopefully next year we can do Independence Day up American style. So thank you again. I'll see you next weekend. I'm not sure what topics I'll cover. I actually started thinking about starting my MLB Hall of Fame week, but I don't want to promote the induction of no titles Derek Jeter. So we'll see. We'll see, but I'll definitely be back next weekend with some interesting, thought-provoking topics, and we'll just keep going from there. So again, I hope the dads out there had a great day. I hope everybody had a good weekend. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you next weekend. Thanks again. See you soon.